The gym was busy that afternoon. The sound of weights clanging, sneakers squeaking against the floor, and faint music playing in the background created a familiar rhythm for everyone who came there. People were focused on their workouts, some chatting quietly, some pushing themselves to lift more than yesterday. Among the crowd was Layla, a teenage girl who came to the gym almost every day after school. She wasn't there to show off or compete with anyone. For her, the gym was a place to escape, to breathe, to feel a little stronger with every step on the treadmill and every lift of the dumbbells. Layla moved through the gym with ease. She knew the layout well. From the cardio section near the entrance to the free weights area tucked in the back corner, her backpack was slung over one shoulder containing her essentials, a water bottle, a towel, and her phone. She had learned early on to keep her things close, not because she feared anyone, but because she liked being organized. That day, the gym felt a little different. There was a subtle tension in the air that Layla couldn't quite place. Maybe it was because a few new security cameras had been installed, or maybe it was the new security guard at the front desk. Thomas was his name. He was tall and broad with a face that rarely smiled. He had been working at the gym for a few months, and people whispered about how he had a strict approach to rules. Some members liked his watchful eye. Others thought he was too harsh. As Layla walked past the reception area toward the stretching mats, she noticed Thomas standing near the entrance, scanning the room with sharp, suspicious eyes. Something about the way he looked at people made her pause for a moment. She didn't think much of it and continued walking, stretching her arms before heading to the treadmill. Meanwhile, near the front desk, a small bag had accidentally fallen to the floor. It belonged to another member, who was chatting with a friend and didn't notice it tumble. The bag was unremarkable, a simple gym bag, but to Thomas it immediately drew attention. He had been instructed to be vigilant, especially after minor thefts were reported in the past. Without a second thought, he assumed that someone had tried to take the bag. Thomas's eyes fell on Layla, who was just a few feet away. She wasn't even near the bag, but her dark skin and quiet demeanor made him suspicious. In his mind, he connected dots that weren't there, convinced that she must have had something to do with the bag falling. He straightened up, his jaw tightening, and began walking toward her with purpose. "Hey, you," Thomas's voice cut through the background noise of the gym. Layla froze, startled. She turned, expecting perhaps a greeting or a simple question, but instead she found herself staring at an accusatory glare. "Stop right there. Did you drop that bag, or are you trying to steal it?" Layla blinked, her mouth opening to respond, but nothing came out. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. I didn't touch it," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. She raised her hand slightly as if to show she was innocent. "I wasn't near it." "I don't know what happened." Thomas didn't seem to hear her. He continued stepping closer, his tone growing sharper. "Don't lie to me. I saw you near the front desk. I know what you're doing. Stay right there until the police arrive." The gym suddenly felt smaller, as if all the noise and movement had vanished. Other members paused their exercises, noticing the confrontation. Some looked confused, some concerned, and a few were ready to intervene. Layla's heart pounded in her chest. She felt a rush of fear, embarrassment, and disbelief all at once. She had never been accused of anything like this in her life, and certainly not in front of so many people. "I'm telling you, I didn't touch the bag," she said again, trying to keep her voice steady. She looked around, hoping someone would speak up, but everyone seemed frozen, unsure of what to do. "Please, you're making a mistake." Thomas's face hardened. He was convinced he was right. "Don't argue with me," he said. "I know what I saw. You're staying here until this is sorted out." At that moment, someone in the background cleared their throat. Layla turned to see a tall man in a gray sweatshirt walking calmly toward them. Even from a distance, he had a presence that made people take notice. He wasn't aggressive, but there was an undeniable authority in the way he moved. It took Layla a moment to recognize him. John Cena, the famous wrestler and actor, who happened to be working out in the gym that day. Cena had been keeping to himself, finishing his routine quietly, but he had noticed the tension from across the room. The way Thomas was accusing Layla without evidence struck him immediately. Cena approached slowly, observing the situation before speaking. "What's going on here?" Cena's voice was calm but firm, carrying easily over the quiet murmurs of the gym members. Thomas turned, startled, and tried to maintain his composure. "This girl was trying to steal a bag," he said quickly, pointing at Layla. "I caught her in the act." Cena looked at Layla, then at Thomas. and something in his expression changed. He could see the fear in her eyes and the way she was trying to explain herself. It was clear to him that she was telling the truth. "Layla?" Cena asked gently, confirming her name. Layla nodded, too stunned to speak. Cena looked back at Thomas. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. Thomas hesitated, realizing for the first time that he might be on camera, or at least being watched by someone influential. I saw her near the bag," he said defensively. She could have taken it." Cena shook his head slowly. "You can't accuse someone without proof. She didn't touch the bag, and you have no right to humiliate her like this." His tone was firm, leaving no room for argument, but not angry, just fair and undeniable. Layla felt a mix of relief and embarrassment wash over her. She wanted to say something, anything, but her words caught in her throat. Cena turned back to Thomas. "Apologize to her," he said. Now Thomas's face flushed. For the first time he looked uncertain. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the gym equipment. Finally he muttered an apology, though it sounded forced. I'm sorry," he said, his eyes avoiding Layla's. Cena nodded to Layla, giving her a reassuring smile. "It's okay," he said quietly, his presence making her feel a little safer. "You didn't do anything wrong." The other gym members started to murmur among themselves, realizing that Layla had been falsely accused. Some shook their heads at Thomas. Others whispered to each other about how unfair it had been. Layla felt a mix of shame and relief, knowing she had been vindicated but wishing the confrontation had never happened. Cena stayed with her for a moment, making sure she was calm before returning to his own routine. Layla took a deep breath, steadying herself. She realized that even though she had been scared and embarrassed, she'd survived the situation with her dignity intact. The gym returned to its normal rhythm, though the incident lingered in the air like a quiet reminder of how quickly assumptions could lead to injustice. For Layla, that day became more than just a workout. It was a lesson in courage, patience, and the unexpected kindness of strangers. She continued her routine, a little more careful but also a little stronger, carrying with her the knowledge that fairness could sometimes arrive when least expected, and that even in moments of fear, support could come from the most surprising places. After the initial shock of being accused, Layla tried to calm herself. Her heart was still racing and she could feel the heat rising to her face. The gym, which had always felt like a safe place, suddenly seemed crowded and intimidating. She kept thinking about what had just happened, how quickly someone had assumed the worst about her without asking a single question. It didn't make sense. She hadn't touched the bag, hadn't even been near it when it fell. Yet here she was, facing accusations in front of everyone. She took a step back, trying to put some space between herself and Thomas. "I don't know why you're saying this," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "I didn't do anything. You can ask anyone who saw me." She glanced around the gym, hoping someone would confirm her story, but everyone seemed frozen, unsure how to react. A few members whispered to each other, casting worried glances toward the front desk while others pretended not to notice, focused on their workouts. Thomas, however, wasn't interested in listening. He continued to loom over her, his eyes narrowed, his body rigid. "Stop talking." "Don't make excuses," he said sharply. "I saw you. I know what you're doing. You're not going anywhere until this is sorted out." Layla felt a lump in her throat. She had never been treated like this in her life. The humiliation was overwhelming. People were staring now, some openly judging her while others looked uncomfortable. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the background and escape the eyes that were on her. But there was nowhere to go. She was trapped, standing in front of the security guard who refused to believe her. Her mind raced. What could she do? How could she convince him that she was innocent? She thought of calling her mom, but Thomas had already blocked any chance of her moving freely. She thought of explaining to the other gym members. But the words stuck in her throat. Fear made it hard to speak, and the embarrassment made it even harder. Just then, a deep, calm voice cut through the tension. "Is everything okay here?" Layla turned her head and saw John Cena walking toward her and Thomas again. His presence seemed to make the air shift. Cena had an energy that commanded attention, but it wasn't intimidating. It was protective, fair, and steady. He looked at Layla with concern, and she felt a small wave of relief wash over her. Thomas stiffened. He wasn't expecting a famous wrestler to step into his confrontation. "This girl, she tried to steal a bag," he said quickly as if the explanation would make him look justified. He gestured toward Layla. "I caught her in the act. I saw her near the bag and she could have taken it." Cena looked at Thomas carefully, reading the situation in a few quiet seconds. Then he turned to Layla. "Is that true?" he asked gently. Layla shook her head, unable to find words at first. Finally, she managed to speak. "No, I didn't touch it. I was just walking by. I didn't even see the bag fall." Cena's eyes softened as he nodded. He turned back to Thomas, who was now clearly uneasy under Cena's gaze. "You can't accuse someone without proof," Cena said firmly. "She didn't do anything wrong. You need to step back and apologize." Thomas's face turned red. He looked around, realizing that the other gym members were now staring at him more critically than before. He tried to justify himself. I saw her near the bag. I thought she—" His voice trailed off. Cena's presence made it impossible for him to continue with his false accusations. Layla's heart pounded in her chest. She felt both grateful and nervous. Grateful because Cena had intervened, but nervous because the scene had drawn attention from everyone in the gym. She could feel the stares, some sympathetic, some judgmental. She wanted the ground to swallow her up, but she knew she couldn't run. Cena was her anchor, giving her a sense of protection and fairness she hadn't felt since the confrontation began. Cena stepped closer to Thomas. "You owe her an apology," he said. His voice was calm but unyielding. "Right now. Don't wait until someone else tells you to do it. Own your mistake." Thomas hesitated, then muttered, I'm sorry." The words were awkward, lacking sincerity, but it was a start. Layla nodded, accepting the apology, though she still felt shaken. Cena gave her a reassuring smile. "It's okay. Don't let this ruin your day," he said quietly. "You didn't do anything wrong." Layla tried to steady her breathing. The embarrassment was still there, but it was now mixed with a sense of relief. She realized that even though she had been wrongly accused, she had survived the situation without losing control. She could see the gym slowly returning to its normal rhythm. People were going back to their workouts, though whispers and glances toward the front desk continued. The rest of her workout felt different. She tried to focus, but the memory of Thomas's accusations lingered. Every time she picked up a weight or ran a step on the treadmill, she replayed the scene in her mind, thinking about how quickly things could spiral out of control when someone judged her without knowing the truth. At the same time, she couldn't help feeling inspired by Cena's intervention. Seeing someone step up for fairness, someone willing to challenge authority when it was wrong, gave her a new perspective. She realized that courage didn't always mean being loud or aggressive. Sometimes it meant calmly standing up for what was right, even when others were intimidated or scared. Other gym members started to talk among themselves. Some expressed outrage at how Thomas had treated Layla. Others praised Cena for noticing the situation and stepping in. It became clear that the incident was not just about one girl being accused. It was about fairness, respect, and how quickly people could make assumptions based on appearances. Layla, meanwhile, began to feel a quiet determination growing inside her. She didn't want this day to define her. She didn't want to feel powerless or humiliated. She decided to keep going, to finish her workout, and to leave the gym with her head held high. The small victory of being believed, even with Cena's help, gave her strength she didn't know she had. By the end of the afternoon, the tension in the gym had eased. Thomas retreated to his post near the entrance, likely thinking about the incident and realizing how badly he had handled it. Layla gathered her things, still feeling a mix of emotions: anger, embarrassment, relief, and empowerment. She knew she would remember this day for a long time, not because of the workout or the gym itself, but because of how she had been treated and how someone had stepped in to protect fairness. As she walked toward the exit, she glanced back one last time. Cena was finishing his own routine, nodding at the staff and members with a calm smile. Layla realized that this moment, this unexpected intervention, had changed her understanding of courage and justice. She didn't need to be famous to stand up for what was right, but she knew that when someone did, it could make a huge difference in someone else's life. That day, Layla left the gym feeling stronger in ways she hadn't expected. The accusation had been humiliating, but the support she received reminded her that fairness and kindness could exist even in tense situations. She carried that lesson with her, ready to face challenges with patience, courage, and the knowledge that standing up for truth was always worth it. Whether anyone else noticed or not, the gym had slowly returned to its normal rhythm after the incident, but the atmosphere still carried a subtle tension. Members were back on the treadmills, lifting weights or stretching quietly in the corners. Yet there was an unspoken awareness in the air about what had just happened. Layla, though calmer than before, still felt the lingering effects of the false accusation. Her stomach was tight and her hands felt clammy. She couldn't shake the embarrassment or the sense of injustice, no matter how much she tried to focus on her routine. Thomas, the security guard, had resumed his position near the entrance, but it was clear he was unsettled. Every time Layla glanced toward him, she noticed the way he avoided direct eye contact, shifting uneasily whenever someone passed by. It wasn't that he was sorry in his heart. He still carried the pride and stubbornness of someone convinced he was doing his job, but the presence of John Cena had changed something. The famous wrestler wasn't just any bystander. His calm, authoritative stance had made Thomas realize that someone had seen the truth, and that his actions could not go unchallenged. Cena, meanwhile, finished his own routine with an easy confidence, but he kept a watchful eye on Layla and the situation. He didn't want to leave immediately, knowing that tensions could flare up again if Thomas felt he could regain control. Cena's presence was subtle but powerful, a reminder that fairness mattered, even in spaces where people often assumed the worst about others. Layla tried to focus on a light cardio session, thinking it might help her calm down. She climbed onto a treadmill and started walking, then jogging slowly. But every time she looked around, her mind wandered back to the accusation. How had it escalated so quickly? How had Thomas decided she was guilty without even asking anyone? And why did it hurt so much to be accused in front of strangers? Her thoughts were interrupted by a friendly voice from nearby. "Are you okay?" asked a fellow gym member, someone she recognized from previous visits but had never really spoken to. His expression was concerned, genuine. Layla managed a small nod, grateful for the kindness. I'm fine," she said softly. "Just a little shaken," the man nodded, understanding. "I saw what happened. That wasn't fair. Don't let him ruin your day." His words, simple as they were, brought a little warmth to Layla's heart. For the first time since the incident, she felt that she wasn't completely alone. People were noticing and people cared. Meanwhile, Thomas had moved slightly closer, clearly keeping an eye on the gym floor and anyone who might question his authority. Layla noticed him and felt a small surge of anxiety. She wanted to ignore him, to focus on her own routine, but it was impossible not to notice the tension he carried. Every step she took on the treadmill seemed to echo in her mind like a reminder that she had been judged unfairly. Cena, noticing the subtle unease, approached her again. "Hey," he said quietly as he placed a hand on her shoulder, careful not to startle her. "How are you holding up?" Layla looked up, startled for a moment, but then she relaxed a little. Cena's presence, steady and calm, made her feel safer. I'm okay," she said, her voice still a little shaky. "Just trying to get through it." Cena nodded. "I know it's not easy. What happened wasn't fair, but you handled it well. You stayed calm and you told the truth. That's what matters." His words weren't just comforting, they were empowering. Layla felt a small but important shift in her mindset. She realized that she hadn't done anything wrong, and that her reaction, though shaken, had been brave. As they spoke, Thomas noticed Cena talking to Layla and stiffened. His eyes flicked between them, a mix of frustration and embarrassment showing on his face. For the first time, Thomas seemed unsure of himself. Cena's calm confidence made him feel small, as if his authority had been undermined. He tried to regain control, but it was clear he no longer had the room to act aggressively without consequences. Layla, sensing the tension, continued her treadmill session, trying to regain focus. But Cena didn't leave immediately. He stayed nearby, making sure Thomas didn't attempt to escalate the situation again. The presence of someone fair and authoritative, who was willing to stand up for truth, had an immediate effect on the gym. People started noticing the difference, realizing that being accused unfairly didn't have to be the end of the story. Minutes passed and the scene slowly started to settle. Cena decided it was time to address Thomas directly. "Look," he said calmly, "you need to think about how you handle these situations. Accusing someone without proof isn't just unfair, it's damaging. You embarrassed her for no reason. That's not how people should be treated." Thomas opened his mouth to respond but found himself at a loss. He was used to being the one in charge, used to making quick judgments without question. But Cena's presence and words made him rethink his actions. He swallowed hard, realizing that he had crossed a line. I didn't mean to, Thomas started, but Cena held up a hand. Intentions don't matter here. Actions do. You need to apologize properly, not just because someone told you to, but because it's the right thing to do. Layla, watching quietly, felt a mix of emotions. She was still nervous, still embarrassed, but she also felt a deep sense of relief. For the first time, she saw that accountability mattered, and that unfair treatment could be corrected, even in a small everyday setting like a gym. Finally, Thomas muttered a full apology, this time more sincere. Layla, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have accused you without proof. I didn't handle that correctly, and I hope you can forgive me. Layla nodded, accepting the apology, though she knew it would take time to forget the humiliation she had felt. Cena smiled at her, giving a small nod of reassurance. See, that wasn't so hard. Sometimes people need to be reminded of fairness. Don't let it shake you too much. You did the right thing by staying calm and telling the truth. Layla took a deep breath, feeling a sense of calm she hadn't felt since the incident began. She realized that the lesson went beyond the gym. It was about life, about standing up for yourself, staying true to your values, and finding strength in moments of fear or embarrassment. The rest of her workout was more focused. She ran on the treadmill, lifted weights, and stretched with renewed determination. Each movement felt like a small victory, a reminder that she could continue her routine despite the unfair accusation. And as she looked around, she noticed other members glancing at her with respect, some nodding in quiet support. By the time she finished, Layla felt stronger, not just physically, but emotionally. The incident had shaken her, but it hadn't broken her. She had faced an unfair situation, and with the help of someone willing to stand for fairness, she had come through it. She realized that courage didn't always mean confronting someone head-on. Sometimes it meant staying calm, being honest, and trusting that the truth would eventually be recognized. As she gathered her things and prepared to leave, Layla reflected on the day. She thought about Thomas, about how quickly assumptions could hurt someone, and about Cena, who had reminded everyone that fairness and integrity mattered. The gym had returned to normal, but for Layla, the lesson would last far longer. She stepped out into the late afternoon sun, feeling the warmth on her face and the breeze on her skin. It was a reminder that even after difficult moments, the world continued, and there was always a chance to move forward, stronger and wiser than before. For Layla, that day was more than a workout or an incident at a gym. It was a moment of growth, of learning about resilience, fairness, and the quiet power of standing up for what is right even when it feels impossible. She knew she would carry that lesson with her, ready to face whatever challenges came next, confident that truth and fairness could prevail, and that courage could show up in the most unexpected ways. The gym slowly returned to its usual rhythm, but the echoes of the earlier incident still lingered in the air. People went back to their routines, but whispers and sideways glances reminded everyone that something unusual had happened. Layla tried to focus on her exercises, but she couldn't stop thinking about the confrontation and what had just occurred. She had been accused unfairly, humiliated in front of strangers, and yet somehow the situation had been corrected. The relief she felt was tempered by the sting of being judged without reason. John Cena stayed nearby, finishing his own workout but keeping a discreet eye on the situation. His presence had already helped calm the tension, but he didn't want to leave until he was sure Layla felt safe, and Thomas, the security guard, understood the gravity of his mistake. The gym management had noticed the commotion, and a few staff members were quietly observing, aware that a serious conversation would need to happen soon. Thomas, meanwhile, was visibly unsettled. He had thought he was in control, but Cena's intervention had shifted the balance. His initial confidence had crumbled, replaced with a mixture of embarrassment, frustration, and confusion. He knew he had mishandled the situation, and for the first time he realized the impact of his actions. Accusing someone without proof didn't just risk being wrong, it could humiliate, hurt, and even damage lives. Cena approached Thomas with calm authority. "Listen," he said firmly but not angrily. "What you did was wrong. Accusing someone without evidence is not just unfair, it's harmful. You embarrassed her in front of everyone, and that's not acceptable. You need to take responsibility. Thomas shifted uncomfortably, trying to justify himself. I thought I was doing my job. There had been thefts before and I was just trying to be vigilant. Cena nodded slowly. Being vigilant doesn't mean assuming the worst. Being responsible means acting fairly, asking questions and confirming facts. You didn't do that, and that's why this escalated. It's not just about the rules, it's about respect and fairness. Layla listened quietly, still catching her breath. She didn't want to intervene, but she felt a deep sense of gratitude for Cena's words. He wasn't just speaking for her, he was teaching Thomas, and in a way, he was teaching everyone in the gym about how to treat others with fairness and dignity. Thomas swallowed hard, clearly absorbing the lesson, though his pride made it difficult. I understand, he said finally, his voice low. I didn't think about it that way. I apologize again to her. I shouldn't have accused her without proof. Layla nodded, accepting the apology. It wasn't easy to forgive someone who had embarrassed her in front of so many people, but she understood that people could make mistakes, and that accountability mattered. Thomas's apology, though delayed, was a start. Cena turned to Layla, giving her a reassuring smile. You handled that very well, he said. You stayed calm, explained yourself, and didn't let fear take over. That's the best anyone can do in such a situation. Layla felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of relief and pride. She realized that the incident, though frightening, had shown her inner strength she hadn't recognized before. She had faced unfair treatment and navigated it without losing control, and that was something she could carry forward in life. Cena's presence also influenced the other gym members. People who had watched silently now began to nod in understanding, some offering supportive smiles. Conversations started quietly around the gym, with members discussing the importance of fairness, not jumping to conclusions, and the impact of assumptions. It became clear that the incident was more than just one girl being accused. It was a lesson for everyone in the room about respect, fairness, and human decency. Layla continued her workout, feeling more focused. She picked up a set of dumbbells and started her strength training, each movement deliberate and strong. The weight wasn't just physical. It felt symbolic, as if she was lifting not only the dumbbells but also the burden of humiliation she had carried earlier. Every repetition reminded her that she could move forward, stronger than before. Thomas retreated to his post near the entrance, clearly deep in thought. He watched Layla for a moment, then looked around at the gym, realizing how his actions had affected everyone. He was beginning to understand that being in a position of authority wasn't just about enforcing rules. It was about handling situations responsibly, fairly, and with respect for the people involved. Cena stayed for a while longer, ensuring that the situation had fully de-escalated. He spoke quietly to Layla, offering advice and encouragement. Remember, he said, sometimes people make mistakes and it can hurt, but standing up for yourself with calm and honesty, that's always the right path, and never let someone else's judgment define who you are. Layla nodded, taking in his words. She realized that even though she had been vulnerable, she had also been brave. The experience had taught her that courage wasn't always loud or confrontational. It could be quiet, steady, and grounded in truth. As the afternoon passed, the gym slowly returned to its normal pace. Members resumed their routines and the earlier tension began to fade. However, the lesson remained, visible to anyone who had witnessed the incident. The importance of fairness, the consequences of assumptions, and the power of speaking up for what's right had all been demonstrated in a very real and human way. Layla packed up her things when she finished her session, feeling a mix of exhaustion and empowerment. She had faced a challenging moment, and though it had been uncomfortable, she had come through it with grace and dignity. Walking toward the exit, she felt a sense of pride in herself, and a deeper understanding of fairness and courage. Cena gave her one final nod as he left the gym, a silent acknowledgement of her strength and resilience. Layla watched him go, feeling inspired not only by his actions but also by the lesson he had imparted. Sometimes the smallest acts of standing up for what is right can have the biggest impact. As she stepped outside into the cool late afternoon air, Layla reflected on the day. She thought about Thomas, who had made a mistake but had the chance to learn from it. She thought about herself, about how she had stayed calm and truthful despite fear and embarrassment. And she thought about the importance of support, fairness, and accountability in everyday life. The walk home felt lighter. The weight of the incident still lingered, but it was no longer a burden. It was a lesson, a story she could carry forward. She knew that the experience had changed her in some ways, making her stronger, more aware, and more prepared to face challenges in the future. For Layla, the gym had always been a place of personal growth, a space to build physical strength. That day, it had also become a place of emotional growth. She had learned about resilience, fairness, and the courage to remain calm in the face of false accusations. It was a lesson she would remember long after the weights were put away and the gym lights dimmed. The story of that afternoon would stay with her, the shock of being wrongly accused, the fear and humiliation she had felt, and the relief and empowerment that came from being supported by someone who stood for fairness. It was a reminder that even in moments of fear or injustice, courage and truth could prevail, and that the presence of someone willing to do the right thing could make all the difference. Layla left the gym feeling stronger, not just in her muscles but in her spirit. She had faced a difficult situation and navigated it with honesty, courage, and calm. The lesson of fairness and accountability, reinforced by Cena's presence, had given her a new perspective on life, one she would carry with her always. The days after the incident at the gym were different for Layla. She continued her routine as usual, but her mind kept returning to what had happened. Every time she walked past the front desk or lifted a dumbbell, she remembered the accusation, the fear, and the humiliation. Yet she also remembered the kindness and fairness she had experienced, the moment John Cena had stepped in and shown that standing up for someone else could change everything. At first, Layla felt conflicted. On one hand, she was relieved that the situation had been corrected and that Thomas, the security guard, had apologized. On the other hand, she couldn't help but replay the moment when she had been wrongly accused. The embarrassment had left a mark, and she realized how deeply words and assumptions could affect someone. It wasn't just about the gym or the bag. It was about trust, fairness, and how people treated each other in daily life. Layla started thinking about what she could do with the experience. She didn't want to dwell on the fear or humiliation, but she wanted to turn it into something positive. She decided to share her story with close friends and family, not as a way to complain, but to raise awareness about the importance of fairness and understanding. Talking about it helped her process what had happened, and it also reminded her that she hadn't done anything wrong. She had stayed calm, honest, and true to herself. That was her strength. At the gym, the atmosphere slowly improved as well. Members who had witnessed the incident began to treat Layla with a new respect. Some offered kind words or supportive smiles, and a few even mentioned to the staff that they had been impressed by how she handled the situation. The incident, which had once felt isolating and humiliating, began to feel like a turning point, a reminder for everyone in the gym about the importance of fairness and empathy. Thomas, the security guard, also reflected on what had happened. He realized that he had acted too quickly and without proper evidence. The embarrassment of being corrected in front of everyone, especially by someone as calm and authoritative as Cena, had left a lasting impression. Over the next few days, he approached his job differently. He paid more attention to people's behavior. Yes, but he also reminded himself to ask questions, confirm facts, and avoid assumptions. His actions became more measured, and over time, members noticed a change in how he handled situations. Layla noticed it too. She saw Thomas approaching incidents with more caution and fairness, and though she still felt a little cautious around him, she appreciated the change. It was a subtle reminder that even people who make mistakes can learn and grow if they take responsibility and reflect on their actions. The experience also taught Layla about courage. She realized that bravery wasn't just about standing up to someone intimidating. It was also about staying calm, speaking the truth, and trusting that the right thing would eventually be recognized. The moment Cena had intervened wasn't just about being famous or powerful. It was about noticing injustice and choosing to act. Layla carried that lesson with her, understanding that courage could appear in many forms and that fairness was worth standing up for, no matter the setting. In the weeks that followed, Layla continued her gym routine with renewed focus. Each session felt like more than just exercise. It was a way to reclaim her sense of control and confidence. Every run on the treadmill, every lift of a dumbbell felt like a small affirmation that she could move forward, despite fear, humiliation, or mistakes made by others. She felt stronger, not just in her body, but in her mind and spirit. The story of the incident slowly spread among the gym community. People talked about the importance of not jumping to conclusions and the role of fairness in everyday life. Many mentioned Cena's intervention, praising how a single act of standing up for justice had turned a tense situation into a lesson for everyone. For Layla, it was heartening to see that one moment could inspire conversations about respect, empathy, and accountability. Layla also reflected on the way assumptions could affect people differently, depending on how they were perceived. She understood more clearly that bias, whether conscious or unconscious, could have real consequences. That awareness made her more empathetic toward others who might face unfair treatment, and she found herself paying closer attention to how people were treated in her daily life. It was a quiet shift in perspective, but an important one. At the gym, the management took steps to prevent similar incidents from happening in the future. Staff training was improved, emphasizing fairness, proper investigation, and respectful communication. Cameras and monitoring were reviewed, not to create fear, but to ensure that everyone could feel safe and respected while working out. Layla felt a sense of pride knowing that her experience had helped bring about positive change in her environment. As weeks turned into months, Layla's confidence grew. She no longer thought about the incident with fear or embarrassment. Instead, she remembered it as a turning point, a moment when she had faced injustice and emerged stronger. She realized that the experience had taught her lessons she could carry into other areas of her life. To speak her truth, to stay calm under pressure, and to trust that fairness could prevail, even when it seemed unlikely. Her friends and family noticed the change in her as well. Layla seemed more assured, more thoughtful, and more aware of the world around her. She shared her story with them, emphasizing the importance of standing up for what is right but also staying calm and collected in moments of conflict. Her story became an example of resilience, a reminder that challenges, even unfair ones, could be transformed into lessons of strength and wisdom. The incident also sparked conversations online, as people shared stories about being falsely accused or judged unfairly. Layla was careful not to make it about shame or blame. Instead, she focused on the lessons she had learned and the importance of fairness and accountability. Her story resonated with others, inspiring them to think more deeply about how they treated people in their own lives. Looking back, Layla understood that the gym incident was not just about one accusation or one mistake. It was about the ripple effects of fairness, the courage to act when someone is being treated unjustly, and the power of staying true to oneself. It was about recognizing mistakes, apologizing sincerely, and learning from them. And most importantly, it was about the quiet strength that comes from facing fear with honesty and calm. For Layla, life moved forward, but the lessons stayed with her. Every time she walked into the gym, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The weights and treadmills were no longer just tools for physical fitness. They were symbols of resilience, reminders of how far she had come, and testaments to the power of truth and fairness. Even Thomas, the security guard, seemed to have changed. He approached his job with more awareness and care, and though Layla didn't forget the embarrassment, she appreciated the effort he made to be fair. It reminded her that growth was possible for everyone, even those who make mistakes. Layla's story, once a moment of fear and humiliation, became a story of empowerment and courage. It was a reminder that fairness, honesty, and compassion mattered, not just in dramatic moments, but in everyday life. The experience had shaped her into a stronger, more resilient person, capable of facing challenges with calm dignity and a clear sense of right and wrong. As she continued her life, Layla carried the lessons from that day everywhere she went. She knew that there would be challenges ahead, moments of unfairness and misunderstanding, but she also knew that she had the strength to face them. She had learned that courage was not always loud or visible. It could be quiet, steady, and grounded in truth. And she had learned that fairness,